it, let me know. Just spring cleaning, rearranging, and putting some stuff up on the walls. But anyway, wanted to talk to you about the importance of war games. You see, as creatures, we face stress all the time. And it's not just, oh, my boss hates me, I hate my job, I don't have enough money. That's not the only stress that exists. I want you to think back, with nutrition we always talk about before agriculture, because that's where the bulk of our evolution happened. But you have to think psychologically as well, which is, once again the same case. Psychologically, we did the bulk of our evolution, for our hardwiring to be, all that before agriculture, before civilization, society. This is so appropriate, talking about war games, and my kitten is playing at murder with his little, mouse toy. But here's the importance of war games is to keep the mind and the body sharp. And this is why I study martial arts. It's fitness and nutrition are fantastic, and I love them. And if I couldn't do martial arts, I would still pursue fitness activities and a nutritive lifestyle. But war games, playing at conflict, is important to our development, not only as humans but as animals, because life is inherently stressful, and these war games allow us to develop and cope with incoming external stresses, and to a point with internal stresses as well, because they help us learn about our stress response and all that. And for some people it's an intuitive thing, and other people we measure out and kind of figure out where our safe zones are and stuff. I tend to be a more cerebral person in that aspect. I'm very academic when it comes to martial arts. I'm very academic when it comes to fitness. That's just more of my speed. I prefer the academic side of things as opposed to, say, the competition side or whatever. I'm not a sports guy. I'm not really a competitive fighter. I don't think there's anything wrong with those things. And I'll tell you why. Because those things are exactly the war games that I'm talking about. Those are the competitions where we take our training for war games and our play at war games, and we put stakes on the table. And I don't mean meat stakes, but gambling stakes. We put pride and reputation. Sometimes there's money involved. Sometimes there are other resources involved. And this helps us cope with the rigors of life. You see, there's no point in total, absolute peace, simply because the universe is never going to be totally and absolutely at peace. And as soon as you relegate yourself to a lifestyle of pure peace and never readiness for conflict, you have put yourself in the position of the victim. This is why I'm against things like gun control. This is why I'm against policies that say you can't defend yourself, or defer to somebody else to defend you. It's not because I think it's bad for somebody else to step in and help you out. And not that I think it's bad for there to be somebody who is a full-time hired person to be a societal protector or anything like that. It's more the fact that you are responsible for yourself. You are responsible for your life first and foremost. And it's pretty much a proven fact that police don't stop crimes. They simply clean up the mess that was left afterwards, and usually poorly. And and the military is while in many cases they do a good job at what they do, in many cases they're following orders from people who are not looking out for our best interests. And you could go on and on about the pros and cons of all this, but none of that's the point. The point is that you are your first line of defense. And no matter how peaceful you choose to live your life, if you neglect playing your war games, you are doing a great disservice to yourself. Now, because I prize freedom higher than anything else, I can't tell you that your choice is wrong. I'm simply telling you that your choice is not the choice that I would make, and I don't believe it's the responsible choice. Now, does this mean that you have to become an elite MMA fighter? Does this mean that you have to become the #1 marksman in the world or anything like that? No, not necessarily. But you should be able to clear your house. You should be able to know that you can climb over something. You need to be able to know that you can run. There are, of course, exceptions. If you happen to be a disabled person, you may have to rely on others more. But even then, it's your responsibility to line up the measures that you need in the shit hits the fan circumstances. There's an entire culture in the survival and prepping world about shit hits the fan. Because it's not about, something's going to happen. It's about something could happen, and it's pretty damn impossible to predict. You should have some modicum of preparedness. You should have a month's worth of stores saved up. You should have ammo and medical supplies and weapons and training in all of those things. You should have an escape route, a backup plan. You should have a safe house or a place that you know that you can go that will be safe. You need to put these plans into effect, not because something will happen, but because something could happen, and it's pretty damn hard, pretty damn impossible to predict. And that's the point that I'm trying to get across with the importance of war games. And I say war games as a catch-all term here, but I am specifically meaning learning combat, learning hand-to-hand combat of all types, learning firearms combat, learning melee weapons combat, learning improvised weapons combat, learning prepping and survival. Following things like I teach you, which is survival fitness, which is your physical capability to carry out those plans. There are just hundreds of things that you need to take into account, and the war games that you play at, the playing at conquering another person or at conquering a situation is incredibly important, because it will put you into the mindset of making it through, surviving, winning, coming out alive. And I understand for some of you it's not all that. And in a minor way, playing literal war games, like computer games, video games, does actually, in some fashion, give you a slight edge psychologically to deal with the things, but it's not a proven link, and it's not a strong link. Not as strong as, consistently going through training, in direct proportion to said events. But I want you to start thinking about the war games that will be necessary. Do you live, say, by the Great Lakes? You may need to, pick up swimming and cold weather preparedness tips. You're going to need to learn how to hunt. You're going to need to learn how to forage. You're going to need to learn how to dominate another person, and not in some freaky sexual way. That shit's just weird and right out. But you need to learn how to be on top. You need to learn how to practice not dying. Rory Miller, one of my favorite authors, says never, ever practice dying. when you're practicing weapon disarms, never hand the weapon back to your training partner. Make him go get it yourself, or take turns stabbing each other, or whatever the case may be. Never just give up. Never accept defeat. Now, in sporting circumstances, there are times where you just have to be a good sport and go, okay, I lost, because your health and legality basically mean that you need to know when to let up. But for the rest of it, don't take no for an answer. Don't take a loss as an acceptable answer, because losing is never acceptable. And let's get this straight. Second place means you still lost. Second place means that you were not the winner. We just put out second and third place and sometimes other prizes as consolation prizes for, well, you did really well. Yeah, great. It doesn't really mean anything. So I just want you to start thinking about the war games that are going to be pertinent to how you perceive the world and pertinent to your environment. Obviously, living in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm not necessarily in dire straits when it comes to cold weather preparedness, but god damn it if I don't need hot weather preparedness, because dehydration and heat stroke are a reality here. Lots of people get really hurt or worse here every year simply because of dehydration and heat stroke. Something that you have to consider. In the cold, you actually still have to worry about dehydration because cold saps out moisture. But it's different because preparing water for storage and long-term storage and everything and carrying on you is going to be a little bit different in cold weather climates than it is in hot weather climates. The amount of clothing that you wear is going to be different. In hot weather, it's actually a pretty big hindrance wearing flak jackets and heavy boots and all that, but you're going to have to make sacrifices. In the cold weather, you have to wear heavy gear and it's going to slow you down, and there's pros and cons to all of it. So stop looking at war games as cockfighting, and even though the the definitions are a little different here and there, remember that technically still speaking, our team sports, football, soccer, baseball, are still forms of war games. Competition is not only for mating, it's for psychological and neuromuscular preparedness for conflict. And that's the mindset that I want you to start getting into. Even if it's just a little bit here and there, you got to start thinking something. Yeah, the chances of violent crime happening to you is less than 1%. It's a tiny, tiny possibility. But unless you know how to predict that stuff, unless you are the keenest of individuals and have fantastic flight response, you are probably, just saying, you are probably going to want to be prepared to fight. Because I'll tell you, fighting and running are great options. Freezing is a bad option no matter what. At the very least, fight past the freeze. That's all I got for you. Talk to you guys next time. Good journey.